Hello, and welcome back to my channel. Today I am going to talk about 8 books that I liked the least in 2020. Now, I like to try to keep things cool and try to be civil and nice on my channel, just because people like all different sorts of things, but I am ready to roast some books that I hated. And again, this is not an attack on the authors or anyone that enjoyed these books. These are books that I had an issue with the content and that I really didn't enjoy. So with that, let's get into the video. So I'm gonna start with Guns Blazing. The first book that I really didn't like, these are in no order, just the first book that I'm gonna talk about is Reminders of Him by Colleen Hoover. Now this came out this year and it was a favorite of so many people, but I thought it was not good at all. First of all, I don't think that I'm the right person to be reading Colleen Hoover books, just because I think her writing is a little bit juvenile and I just don't enjoy it. I feel like in general she kind of manipulates the reader's emotions by putting her characters in these traumatic situations and kind of having like these men come save them. And I haven't only read I've read 2. I've read this one and then I read Verity, which is very different, and I don't even feel like I count it in the same sort of category. But in her romances, that's the impression that I get. I am not here to just have these women that have had trauma after trauma and men that have had trauma after trauma. Like, that just does nothing for me. If I'm trying to read a romance, I want it to be a little lighter, and if it's gonna be pretty dark and dramatic, I need there to be something more than just surface level trauma, if that makes any sense at all. So Colleen Hoover's books as a whole aside, I did not like this for many reasons. So it's about a woman who has been in prison for drunk driving. She killed her boyfriend and she was pregnant with his baby at the time. Now, she was a kid. She was like 20, I think, something like that. She gave birth in prison, and then the baby went to live with her grandparents on the baby daddy side. So she gets out of prison and decides she's gonna go try to meet her daughter. It doesn't go well. So she goes and ends up meeting this guy who turns out to be her boyfriend's best friend, but they didn't realize it at first, which is a whole different plot element that I'm just like, how? If you were dating and so madly in love but you didn't actually know his friends, that's weird. Or like know enough about them to like have seen a picture, and same with him knowing her. So my issues began on page 2 when Kenna, the female main character, gets out of prison and directly goes to the town where Scotty, the boyfriend that was killed, grew up. And she goes into a bar and isn't drinking, but she's just kind of hanging, and meets the owner. And I can't remember if it's the same day or like the next day that she ends up going to the grandparents' house to try to like meet the kid. Girl, no. Like, you cannot just go ambush these people in their home to try to see your kid that you've never met, that like doesn't know you. So I understand why you want to see her, and I think that's great if you can be a part of her life, but that is not how we do that. I feel like I could do an entire video like just ranting about this book, but I won't. I will just say like 2 more things that I didn't like. First of all, these characters' names are absolutely ridiculous. The male love interest is named Ledger. No, that's his first name, not his last name. The baby / she's like 5 now, is named Diem, D-I-E-M, as in Carpe Diem. I can't get over that. I just can't. That's not, no, I can't do it. And lastly, before we move on to another book that I didn't like, I really did not agree with the way that the grandparents were portrayed almost as villains, because they took this baby in, and I mean, yes, it's their grandchild, but like, they're living their lives. They don't really know the mom at all. They've met her like one time and didn't really get a great impression, and you know, are raising another kid after, you know, they've already raised a kid. So and they want to protect Diem from Kenna because they don't know her. They don't know anything about her. And it just feels so strange the way it's written, whereas like we're definitely supposed to be like all in on Kenna's side, and like honestly I felt more for the grandparents. We're supposed to think it's irrational that they won't let her see Kenna when she just shows up at their house. I don't know, maybe I'm part of the problem, but I just think that's such a silly thing and wrong to be like mad about or make them the bad guys. I don't know. If you like Colleen Hoover, I love that for you, and I hope you enjoyed this book, but like I don't think I could stomach another one of her books after this one. So moving on. The next book that I read this year that I really did not like is called Cherish Farah by Bethany C. Morrow. This came out back in February, so I don't remember like super big details, but I know I didn't like it. So this is about two girls, both black. One of them was adopted by white parents, and the others with her birth parents. And they are the two only black kids in like their country club community, super, super wealthy. And they've been best friends like since kindergarten. They kind of have like a kind of codependent, creepy relationship a little bit. Now, Cherish is the name of the daughter who was adopted by white parents, and she is like just absolutely spoiled rotten by her parents, and Farah is the other girl. Her parents are not in any way poor, but they are just not quite as wealthy as Cherish's parents. So Farah ends up spending a lot of time at Cherish's house and kind of like being involved in her family, until one day Farah's family finds out that their house is getting foreclosed on, so things are getting bad. So basically Cherish's family is like, we'll take you in, we can like have you as part of our family for real, for real. And of course Farah's family is like, okay, because like that's our daughter, and even though we're maybe not so wealthy now, like she's still our child. So it gets kind of weird. It is just one of the slowest books that I have ever read, and it just the situations were so complicated and convoluted between these two girls and their schoolmates, and it kind of towed the line between young adult and adult fiction, but like I think it just made it inaccessible to everyone instead of maybe more inclusive. It's written in a sort of stream of consciousness style that just doesn't really work for me most of the time. Cherish and some of the other kids in their school that were, you know, secondary characters had like little to no personalities, and I was just not interested. The twist was really cool, but unfortunately I had no interest in the book at that point, so it was kind of lost on me. So maybe someone out there will like this book. It has an audience. I know it's like one of the lowest rated books on Goodreads that I've ever read. I think it has like 3.06 stars or something. So yeah, I guess maybe I'm not alone in my dislike for this book. This next book I'm going to talk about is a huge bummer for me because it is by one of my favorite authors, and that book is The Summer Place by Jennifer Weiner. So she is, you know, the queen of the beach read. She puts out a new summery sort of book every year, and I have really loved her books in the past. Some of her older ones I've really loved, and since I started to get really into reading again a few years back, I've really enjoyed Mrs. Everything and Big Summer, and what was last year's? I don't remember. That summer. It's on my shelf. So yeah, I mean, but this was not good at all. So it's about 3 generations of a family, and the current dilemma is their adult daughter. She is like, you know, early 20s. She quarantined with her new boyfriend at the time, and now that quarantine's over, they are engaged. Basically, it's all about planning the wedding and everybody coming to town, and they end up having the wedding at like this house where they all stayed every summer. The mom, who's actually her stepmom, spent all her summers, and the kids spent the summers, and that's like the general plot. Now, I have never read a book that I've gone into so many characters' backstories that just don't matter. This book is like 400 plus pages, and the actual story of what's going on in like the present day is gotta be less than 200. So there's so much that I'm just like, I don't need to know this about this character. There is a lot of infidelity, which I I don't know if you could hear that, but my cat Reginald just meowed, so he doesn't like infidelity either. It was just excessively long with like chapters that were 50, 60 pages, which just makes it so much harder to get through. In addition to all the infidelity, there was a lot of hypocrisy surrounding it. So people that are all freaked out, oh my gosh, is he cheating? Is he cheating? Are also cheating. So it's hard to like any characters in this book. The setting was nice though, I guess. And truly, the number of coincidences that the plot relies on, it's just, it doesn't work. It does not work at all. So unfortunately, this one was one of my worst of the year. So the next book is Insomnia by Sarah Pinborough. I wish I could remember more about this. I mean, maybe I don't, but I just remember basically that I was bored out of my mind and it was just painfully slow. This is about what I remember, a woman who is approaching her 40th birthday and basically can't sleep. Like, she just cannot sleep. And the same thing happened to her mother when she was nearing her 40th birthday. And like, they kept saying like, oh, she's losing her mind, she's going crazy. And so she's like, is that happening to me too? Now, I do remember there was this really stupid poem that keeps getting repeated throughout the book that started to drive me crazy. And besides that, my Goodreads review is not really helping me remember much. All it says is first 75% is ungodly boring, last 25% is chaotic and makes no sense. So clearly very helpful to people reading this review. But if I recall correctly, that's basically how it felt. The ending was just lazy, and you know what? We're gonna just leave it there because someone may still want to read this, and it is like a, you know, spooky thrillery sort of book. But I just remember dragging through this, and it was not a good time. So another one sort of revolving around sleep is Stay Awake by Megan Goldin. So this is basically about a woman who wakes up in the back of a taxi cab and has no memory of where she was or where she's going. She has the driver take her to her house, and then she gets there and the owners are like, yo, you don't live here, we don't know who you are. And she ends up with all this writing on her hands when she woke up that just says like, stay awake, all over her hands. And she has no idea what's going on or how she got there or why she needs to stay awake. So obviously she's very, very disoriented, and she's kind of wandering the streets of New York City, and she sees in like a window where the news is playing reports on a murder where the words stay awake are written in blood on like a window that faces out. And she's like, oh my gosh, did I have something to do with this? So this book did not work for me because it was very repetitive. It's like every time she wakes up and she can't remember where she is, she has this writing on her hand, and we do this so many times throughout the book. This is the same author that wrote The Night Swim. I think that came out in 2020, and I loved that. So I was very excited for this, and it literally felt like someone else wrote the book. The main character, Liv, just drove me crazy to no end, and I can't imagine what it's like to wake up every time you wake up and have no recollection of what you're doing, where you're going, how you got there. But at the same time, she would not accept help from people that wanted to help her, and that was so frustrating. And I felt like I was the one in like a Groundhog Day cycle because I kept feeling like I was reading the same scene over and over and over again because it was so boring and nothing happened. There were some really big plot holes as well as some like unnecessary red herrings, and like, I get it, they're part of thrillers, but sometimes you just don't need one after another. So anyways, not my fave. I'm not done reading Megan Goldin's books because I have enjoyed them in the past, but this was just not it. This next one is another one that's super popular, and I'm sure someone is gonna just shut this video off because I'm slandering their favorite book, but it is Every Summer After by Carly Fortune. So I thought this was going to be amazing. I love a friends to lovers trope. I love childhood friends growing up and falling in love, and this was everything that I like. Just I couldn't stand this book. So it's about a girl who has a like summer house with her family up on some lake. I can't remember where it was, to Michigan maybe. And these two brothers, they live there year round, and during the summers they hang out all summer, and everyone is like best friends, and her and the younger brother are, I think, the same age. Maybe he's 1 year older, but they end up, you know, having a romance, and then something crazy happens and they don't talk anymore. And throughout their lives, like growing up, they don't have any contact until the girl, Percy is her name, she gets a phone call from the other brother saying, our mom died, who was like a second parent to her, or a third parent, I guess, and like, will you come back for the funeral? And she's like, of course I will, but it's bringing up all these emotions because she hasn't seen her ex-boyfriend, who like first love or whatever. And so it's kind of going in flashbacks and in the present day. I know that teenagers are horny, but there was so much focus on the teenagers like talking about sex and having sex that like I felt weird reading about it. I hated the older brother because he was low-key a predator, always like coming on to Percy and making her feel icky, even though she sort of liked the attention because she was a teenage girl, and what are you supposed to do if a hot guy's there? But like, maybe it's just me looking as a 30-something now. It's gross, and he is not a good guy. I mean, he is a creeper. Now, and this is billed as like a coming-of-age romance, but like I saw no character development. I didn't feel connected to these characters, and I definitely didn't feel like they were coming of age in anything other than having sex. Yeah. This was not the book for me, and I don't want to take anything away from anyone who loved it because I know it was incredibly popular. It also, a lot of people compared it to Christina Lauren's book, Love and Other Words. I haven't personally read that, so I don't know, but I do know that some people who didn't necessarily dislike the book were pretty not pleased with how much is nearly identical to this book. This next one will be a surprise to no one, and that is New Moon by Stephenie Meyer. So you might be like, wait, you liked the other Twilight books then? No, I didn't. This is just the worst of the worst, in my opinion. The other ones were stupid and juvenile, and I didn't really like them, but I felt like they were fine for what they were. This one, though, was so boring, and I felt, maybe because of what happens later, in retrospect, I disliked it even more. But Jacob was, you know, the lead kind of male in this one. Bella is basically just a sad girl the entire book, and Jacob does everything he can to make her feel better, and for nothing. This was definitely a book that I was so hard Team Jacob, and then I felt very betrayed after reading the other two books, and that is all I really have to say about this one. It was just boring compared to the others. At least stuff happened, even if it was stupid stuff. You know, this one was just Bella being sad. All right, the last of the books that I really disliked in 2022 is Daisy Darker by Alice Feeney. I've talked about this on my channel already, I believe. It's a sort of a take on And Then There Were None by Agatha Christie, which is a book that I've read that I've really enjoyed. A lot of, you know, authors use that sort of formula for their thrillers, and it can work great. It can be super fun time. This was not one of those times. So the big twist, the big reveal at the end, I guessed it from like page 5, and that's not common for me. Normally it takes me much longer to kind of catch on to what's going on. I'm not saying that I'm dumb, but sometimes I'm just not as quick at connecting the dots. So the Darker family is all on this island in Ireland. It's on a tiny island somewhere in the UK or Ireland, and it's one of these places where you can only go in and out with the tide, so they're basically stuck on this island until the morning. And it's Grandma Darker's 90th birthday, I believe, and so the whole family, they're kind of dysfunctional, don't always get along great, but they are all coming out to her little house on this island for her birthday. And so one by one, they start dying. That's like the basis of the story. Now, my issues really started when one of them died and nobody was like, well, we need to figure out how to get to land. Like, nobody was freaked out. I understand if, like, their phones are not working out there, because of course they're not, and they can't get a boat out because it's a storm, and, you know, the tide's in. So, but, like, nobody is, like, concerned. And I just felt like that was so bizarre. I mean, I can't remember. I think it's the grandma. The grandma dies first. Sorry, spoiler. But, I mean, that happens really early. And nobody, like, it just happens, and nobody seems to, like, bat an eye much at it. So it's just kind of bizarre, to be honest. And for a lot of this book, I was just like, okay, so this is what's going to happen. We're going to have to wait for everyone to die, and then we'll find out what's actually going on. And honestly, that's kind of what happened. But throughout the entire book, it remained the same in that we are, like, nobody cares. People die, and, like, yes, they're a weird dysfunctional family, but, like, I don't know. I think you still probably care if your estranged brother drops dead. And someone in the house probably had something to do with it. Maybe I'm the crazy one. I don't know. I just, no. This was a book club pick for me in, like, October, I think, and, like, I think one person liked it. So, it was not a hit with my group, but maybe you'll like it. I do love other Alice Feeney books, so it was kind of a bummer, but I hope her next one kind of goes back to the way she used to do stuff. And those are the 8 books that I liked the least in 2022. I don't want to say the worst books because it's truly just my opinion, but, you know, to me they were the worst, I guess. But just the books that I liked least in 2022. Hopefully I was able to articulate it a little bit, because sometimes I just get ranty. If you liked this video, leave a comment, give me a thumbs up down below. I would love it if you would subscribe. I just hit 100 subscribers. It felt so good to hit that kind of milestone. And so, yeah, thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll hopefully have 1 or 2 more videos this year. I'm kind of maybe wrapping up my favorites after this kind of like Debbie Downer video, but who knows? Who knows? So thanks again for watching, and we will see you in the next one. Bye!